Well, whenever I pick the book of Revelation to read on a Sunday service, I can sense in some of you this, in many of you, she's picked the scary gospel. Maybe she's trying to tell us something, like the coming of the end of the world. No, not really. In fact, not at all. Today is Reign of Christ Sunday. So these two readings, the one that Nancy read and I read, are connected. On this particular Sunday, when we prepare for Thanksgiving, the Revelation reading and the one from Danbury have one thing in common: the presence of vision. Vision. I particularly like Jonathan Swift's definition of what vision is. He said, vision is the art of seeing what's invisible to others. The art of seeing what's invisible to others. Actually, I'd like you to remember that a vision isn't just about what's going to be in the future. We can have a vision of what's been in the past as well. You know, what something means to us just from an object that we might have. You know, this Thanksgiving, if you're lucky enough to spend it with family and friends, I'd like you to realize that this year you have the gift of actually sitting down with the people who you care about and who care about you. That was not true last Thanksgiving. So while we all have things to be grateful for, this one thing is unique to this year. I want you, wherever you get together this year, to be grateful and to pass the gravy and the vision. The vision that grew out of our isolation during the pandemic. I'll give you one example of a vision from the past. The other day I opened the shaker cabinet that's in our dining room, where we keep the glasses and the good dinnerware we never use. And there in the back were 5 lacy, clear, crystal Fostoria goblets. If you're beyond a certain age, you know what a Fostoria crystal looks like. And they originally had belonged to my grandmother. My grandmother, instead of calling her Grammy, we called her Gami. So these belonged to Gami, and originally there were 8. But now there are just 5, just like the number of people missing from our family over the years. I immediately had a flashback to Thanksgiving at Gami's house, but it wasn't from the perspective of an adult. The vision was from being a 7-year-old and being underneath the dining room table under the lace tablecloth, looking out. And I remember how I loved to look out and see my grandmother's thin Irish ankles going back and forth with the food and the settings for the table. And always those Fostoria crystal goblets. Now the thing about you, this is a look back vision. The thing about using your look back vision is that now you do it, and you don't have the simple perspective of a 7-year-old, but the perspective of a grown-up. I have a vision of those Thanksgivings now, and I understand why. Besides the food, besides the football, there was always this background bickering. There's a bickering between my troubled uncle and my troubled dad. The thing is, we've always been told, you are most annoyed by the person who is most like you. And they were very much alike. They were so much alike, they couldn't stand each other. One had been raised with expectations that he would be perfect, so he drank. And the other had broken his father's rules about it by marrying outside the Polish community to my mother, and then kicked out of the house. So he drank. The thing is, this Thanksgiving, you're likely to be sitting with people that, despite being a loving family, are going to start stuff. Maybe you will be bringing up politics and their opinions about what's wrong or right with the country. Maybe it's the debate over who brought the best dish. Maybe it's just someone telling of the person who's come and is grieving a loss. to cheer up, which never helped anybody. But I want you to remember the crystal goblets and use your look-back vision at that point and understand why they need to be that way. What aching need do they have to be right? When it happens, there are a couple of things you can do. One thing I learned is when it happens, you can diffuse a situation when there's an argument by saying to a person, tell me more why that's important to you. Now, people love to talk about their own opinions. So you might help them to stop what they're doing, and you might learn something as well. Pass the gravy and the vision. Now, both the book of Daniel and Revelation today are glimpses of God, the Creator, and Jesus Christ in the dazzling vision of eternity. This is, after all, as it's called the Reign of Christ Sunday. And it's fitting that we see Jesus in Revelation being called the Alpha and the Omega. In Greek, the beginning and the end. The Alpha and Omega. On Pentecost, we read in Acts 2 the words of the prophet Joel. Prophets are visionaries. And he had a vision about the coming of the Holy Spirit on Pentecost. He said, in the last days, God says, I will pour my spirit out on all people. Your sons and daughters will prophesy. Your young men will see visions. Your old men will dream dreams. Now, we've been counting the Sundays that are after Pentecost ever since. Today is the 26th Sunday after Pentecost, and it's the last Sunday after Pentecost. You ever wonder why we do that every week? Well, all these weeks in between, we've been learning the lessons that Christ taught us about how living like Jesus in a darkening world, is difficult, how we do it. So in this Sunday, which is the last one after Pentecost, we are asked to use our other vision, not the look back vision, but the look forward vision. Jesus was assuring the disciples who weren't sure how they were going to keep their discipleship going forward once he left, that they would be given visions and dreams to keep them going. And you know, it's the same thing for us today. We're not sure how to keep things going when the pandemic has led to fewer people in church and more people drowning in anxiety instead of coming here. Perhaps one conversation you can have this Thanksgiving, even with people who hate organized religion, is to respond to these questions. Do you think that people who believe there's hope can help heal some of the conflict in the world right now? It's one question. How can we bring some light, some understanding to a world where there's constant bickering? Where do we start? What do you think the future holds for us? Tell me about a person you know who made you feel hopeful. Have you noticed this time of the year, not only are there more storms and darkness, but there are fewer rainbows? When's the last time you saw a rainbow? Could it be that we, the followers of Jesus, are meant to be the light of the world like the man we follow in our own right? Reverend Dan Clark was the interim pastor at the Congregational Church in Columbus, Ohio, but he remembered something about storms. He had watched The Wizard of Oz, and in The Wizard of Oz, he noted that it was a black and white world for everyone. And it didn't change until the storm came. The storm injured Dorothy, but it wasn't until the tornado had passed and Dorothy opened her eyes, remember this, that she had a vision of a technicolor place called Oz, where most of the people were really slowly guiding her with hope. back home. Maybe that's what we are meant to do, to take that tiny bit of Christ's light that lives in all of us, like a tiny Christmas candle, and let that light spread out and diffuse into the colors of hope for people. That's what Advent is all about. And by the way, Advent starts next Sunday. I think that we're called to pass the gravy and the visions in the week ahead and saturate this world with the colors of compassion and understanding of the people who are around us, no matter how challenging they may be at times this coming week. We can use that playbook from any one of the 26 Sundays to tell us how to get started. You know, God spoke to Jeremiah, the prophet, in a vision, and gave us a promise, the one promise that we need and the only one we need. God said, "For I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord, plans to prosper you and not to harm you, plans to give you hope and a future." And that's really all we need. Amen.